statement. Is it raining? Has it started raining? Well, let's begin tonight. Let me make you aware of a few things that are going on announcement-wise. If you read my email today, August the 10th, all right? Big day, August 10th, Wednesday night, we're going to start doing our Wednesday night meals. So for those of you that are hungry or won't get anything to eat tonight, we'll feed on August the 4th. And so that first Wednesday will be our meal. We are in the middle of Christmas in July. So there's a display back here. There's displays all over campus. Actually, there's also stuff online. We are in the process throughout the year. We collect things for Operation Christmas Child to pack shoe boxes. I believe that Sunday is November the 13th. The Sunday we're going to pack shoe boxes, and they will be delivered all over the world. So in order to pack shoe boxes, you have to have something to pack in the shoe boxes, and so we're gathering things throughout the year. Well, I forget to mention it, remind us, and perhaps you're like me and it slips your mind, and so we're going to use the month of July to catch up. So those displays over there and the things that we have online, our social media things, kind of let you know some of the needs that we have, that you could help us catch up on some things as we head towards November. Okay. Also, the last Saturday in July. If you're here and you have an interest in helping, you guys have all benefited from this probably, and you've seen it in action. Disaster relief. Mississippi Baptist, Southern Baptist in general, Mississippi Baptist specifically, we have disaster relief teams. You don't have to be a part of that to help the community and serve, but if you wanted to be able to go some places and get into some particular places, you need to be certified. And so the last Saturday in July at Sharon Baptist Church, we're going to publicize some of this info. There is a training session, particularly for chainsaws. And so I made the mistake of this morning with our senior adults of saying to the men that we've got this and then someone corrected me very quickly that someone there had their own chainsaw, a lady, and that she could do that training too if she needed to. So any of you that want to go be trained in chainsaw certification, it's an important thing. And so if you'd like to do that, we're going to publicize that, let you know about that. It's $20, I think, and it's at First Baptist Sharon. Lastly, our sanctuary is looking great. If you've not peeked your head in, it looks great. As a matter of fact, it looks so great, I don't know why we ever had the color on the wall that we had, because that was a really strong color, and this really is impressive. I think you'll love it. Peek your head in there if you can, and we're hoping by next Wednesday we're going to lay carpet, and it's going to start moving even faster. But our goal is September the 11th. You guys know that date. September the 11th, our desire is to be worshiping in there our first Sunday on September the 11th. Speaking of worship, August the 7th, Dave Hook will be here his first Sunday leading us in worship. He is making his way from California. Will probably come into town the weekend before, the last weekend in July, but won't have his feet on the ground, and then he'll start in the office August 1st and lead worship on August the 7th. So pray for them. They have made an offer on a house, and it's under contract, and so we're praying the inspection and all that goes well, and so that they can make a smooth transition and have that part out of the way, and so we're thankful for that. So we'll let you know where you can help and jump in when that time is right. All right? Hey, just not going to dwell on prayer requests specifically, but I will tell you this. We've got a lot of folks, and you can say what you want to about it politically, because that was my first reaction. We've got a lot of folks with COVID, and y'all know that too, and so perhaps you know that. If you don't, I'm telling you, we got a lot of folks even in our own church family that have COVID right now, including some that were diagnosed today. So we had some people of our mission trip team, of the bigger team that don't go to Highland who've been diagnosed, and then some from youth camp and kids camp, and it's just here. And for some folks, relatively smooth. For others, it's been really difficult, including some of our church families. So be aware of that. We're not going to cancel anything. We're just going to be aware. As I told you through all this, I'm a doctor and I got all this figured out. I don't really know that masks. I don't. We're just going to come to church. And if you're infected or you're exposed, please be mindful and take 2 or 3, 4 days off, and then get back to worship with us. Okay, that's what we're going to do, and until we get other directions. All right. All right. Am I missing anything, Ben? Okay. Well, what I want to do this evening, I gave you a big old piece of paper there that's got a lot of blanks on it. I don't want it to bog down and spend tons of time, but I want to continue talking about what I began referencing Sunday morning. We had a great time on our mission trip, and every time I go, I'm reminded of what the Lord does in my own heart when I travel, and I've had a chance to talk to our folks. It always happens. As a matter of fact, I sent a text to our team, and I told them, if I can just get you on the airplane, I know the Lord will do the rest. He always does. He works in our hearts when we go and we're off campus and we're in another environment, another setting, another cultural setting. God always seems to work. And so, but what drives that? What is it? And I have been on mission trips my entire ministry, not consistently, but I did early on. I took a big break, and then now I'm back. What is it that drives that thought? Why do we need to even go? And so I began sharing with you some convictions that I believe that the Lord gives us in His Word about why we should go and why we should be aware of the nations and aware of what God's doing around the world. And I used this illustration Sunday morning about William Carey. William Carey University right down the road. William Carey, very, very incredible missionary to India. Does anyone know what his job was that he did to raise money to support himself? Nope. Unless you know something I don't know. Nobody? Richard and Al, y'all don't know? I mean, y'all were trained at our Baptist institutions. Guy, you were trained at our... No. That was Paul. No, he was a shoe cobbler. He repaired and made shoes. And so, incredible story. But the story is, as he headed off to India, he challenged some people to be praying. And in that challenge, he likened it to going into a mine that was unexplored, dangerous mine, going down into the earth to mine the minerals of the earth. And he told them, he says, I will go down if you will hold the rope. And this is all of our responsibility as the people of God, is that some of us go, but all of us have the opportunity and the responsibility to hold the rope. As a matter of fact, one of the men that he spoke to said this: he took an oath from each of us at the mouth of the pit to this effect, that while we lived, we should never let go of the rope. And so this is what I said Sunday morning. The commitment I'm making is, as long as I'm in ministry and wherever I'm serving, if the Lord leaves me here until He takes me home, great, but wherever it may be, I want to make sure that I'm in a church family that holds the rope. And we send people out. And it's not just that they go internationally, but we go. And we go wherever the Lord opens doors, we go. And we send people out. But what is it that drives us to do that? And I referenced just 4 of them Sunday morning. But I want to just walk back through that, the ones that we covered, and then I wanted to give you the rest of them. Number one, why do we go? What is it that drives us, that conviction that we have for missions? Number one is the fame of God's name. I got this from, you can see at the bottom of your page, this is from John Piper, Let the Nations Be Glad. I got to reading that book again this Monday when I came back to the office. Man, it really got me fired up, and I'm excited about sharing it with you. So the fame of God's name. God is passionately committed to His fame. He's passionately committed to His glory. And some may say, well, that's kind of egotistical. That's kind of selfish of God. No, first of all, it's not selfish of God. You know why? Because He's God. Who else is going to stand in His place, right? Who else is going to take that? And so God is passionately committed to His glory. But let me tell you what else it is. It's not egotistical. It's love. Do you know why it's love? Because God knows there's nothing else that compares to Him. And so if His name is famous, if His name is honored, and His name is glorified, then those who are honoring and glorifying Him and making Him famous, they're on the right page. And if you're not, you're destined for an eternity away from him, right? So God is passionately committed to his name, and he's committed to his fame. I want you to turn, I mentioned 4 verses on Sunday, but turn to Romans chapter 9. This kind of summarizes why God does what he does. Romans chapter 9. In this entire thing we call history, an entire activities that go on throughout the world, why does God do what God does? Romans chapter 9 and verse 17. Paul references Pharaoh back in the time of Israel's history, but you could apply it to anything that God does. Romans 9, verse 17. For the scripture says to Pharaoh, for this very purpose I have raised you up, that I might show my power in you, and that my name might be proclaimed in all the earth. Listen to me, Christian. God does what God does, that his name will be famous. That's all he does. Every action, everything he allows, everything he does that his name may be famous. And so this is why we do what we do, so that God's name will be famous. So I mentioned this Sunday, and I gave it to you here on this page tonight, and I got all the blanks for you to fill in. So let's think about this issue of sin in our life, that thing that separates us from God, that's disobedient to God. What is it that makes it so bad? And I want to tell you that it has to do with the fame of God's name. Follow with me here. I read it Sunday morning, and I gave you blanks here. What is sin? Is it just doing wrong? Is it just letting a cuss word slip? Is it just having a bad attitude? Is it just that? We have a list of 10 of them, right, that kind of let us know. But what is sin at its core? And I gave you that Sunday, but let me tell you what sin is. Number 1, it is the glory of God not honored. The glory of God not honored. So think about this. God's majestic glory, who God is, and I'm not honoring him. I'm serving myself. I'm doing it for myself. It's all about me, not honoring him. That's sin. Number 2, the holiness of God not reverenced. The holiness of God not reverenced. God is, not only is he sinless, but he's superior. This is what makes God holy. He is sinless, we got that, but he is superior to everything else. And we don't reverence him in that? Think about what you did today. Think about what we do daily. Think about the pattern of our life, the lifestyle that we live. We very rarely, if we're not careful, our tendency is, and particularly those that don't know Christ, they never reference God for who he is and how great he is and how holy he is. They live for themselves, right? Number 3, the greatness of God not admired. The greatness of God not admired. You know what that means? That I see all of this go on and I never give a nod or a recognition for who God is and what God's done. You guys see the Webb telescope that's been out this week? I mean, they sent that thing up and they're looking at space, and you can't look at that and not say that's not God. The heavens scream, right? The glory of God. Psalm 19. The power of God not praised. Number 4, the power of God not praised. I see things happen and I don't give God honor and glory for it. That's sin. Next, the truth of God not sought. The truth of God not sought. Where do you find answers? Where do you look for answers? You're looking for them in your friends. You're looking for them in the world. You're looking for them in a book. You're looking for them in some sort of medication. If you're looking for all of your answers there, you're not honoring God at all, right? The truth of God not sought. You're seeking it in yourself, and that is sin. Next, the wisdom of God not esteemed. Same thing. Where do you find wisdom? Where do you look for answers? Anywhere but God. It's sin. The wisdom of God not esteemed, the beauty of God not treasured, the goodness of God not savored. I think about that song we sing, I will sing of the goodness of God. The faithfulness of God not trusted. Oh boy. So, are you a controller? You like to control things? You like to kind of take that in your own hands? You like to have all the answers? You like to figure it out on your own? You like to be in control? you know what happens? You're not trusting God at all, are you? And the faithfulness of God is not trusted. You know what that is? It's sin. The promises of God not believed. The promises of God not believed. The commandments of God not obeyed. We usually get that one. The justice of God not respected. The justice of God not respected. By the way, speaking of people that like to control things. Hey, I'm going to get my pound of flesh. I'm going to make it even. I'm going to get back at that person. I'm going to make it right. Hey, whose job is it to make it right? Vengeance is mine, says who? And so when we step outside of the justice of God and allowing Him to handle it, it's sin. The wrath of God not feared. Hey, that describes our world today, right? No one's fearful of God. Even God's people don't seem to be very fearful of God. The grace of God not cherished. The presence of God not prized. And the person of God not loved. Presence of God not prized, the person of God not loved. What is the summary in all this? What is sin? Is it just the things that I do? No, it's my attitude and my reverence for and my respect for the name and the fame of God Himself. Anything that violates that is sin. Whew, that expands the entire catalog, doesn't it? I find myself, woe is me, that Isaiah said, for I am unclean. Do you know what Isaiah said he was unclean and how? Hey, Isaiah was the prophet of God. He used his mouth. That was what God had given him. It was probably one of the best things he had. And he looked at that and said, that's sorry compared to who you are. Right? It's all about him and his fame and his glory. So next, number 2, worship is the goal. So because God is so glorious, because God is so majestic, all of the earth bows down to worship Him. The Bible tells us, Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glory of God and the sky above proclaims His handiwork. If I keep my voice silent, the rocks are going to cry out. All of creation screams to this majestic God, but not mankind, because we're sinful and we're separated from God. But our prayer and our desire is what? That all the world, including us, would worship this incredible God. So worship, missions exist because worship doesn't. This is a great quote from John Piper. Missions exist because worship doesn't. What do we mean by that? We go tell the lost because the lost doesn't worship our God. They must know Him. They must worship Him. And so we are on mission. So missions is the fuel, and missions is the goal of our mission. Worship is the goal, and worship is the fuel of mission. Excuse me. What do I mean by that? Worship is the fuel of missions. What do I mean by that? I have experienced this incredible God. He saved me. He's rescued me. He has given me abundant life. It fuels me, right? I want people to know what God's done. It fuels me to go tell. It's also the goal. Why do I say that? Worship is the goal of missions because I want everybody to do and experience what I've experienced. I want everyone to worship God like I haven't discovered how to worship God. So worship is the goal and the fuel of our mission. Thirdly, there is salvation in no one else. There is salvation in no one else. Why do we go? Because we know the answer. There is salvation in no one else. There is nothing that any human being on the planet can come up with that will save them. Nothing. 7.5 billion people on this planet. 1 billion Chinese. And they're living their lives atheistically, no understanding of a God in the way that they're taught, although the Lord's working there, but they don't worship God. And so we know the answer, right? We must tell them. 1 billion Muslims, a billion Hindus in India, that they're worshiping 1 million different gods, but they're all going to, not one of them is going to save them. And we know the answer, right? There are 1 billion Muslims, or at least, and they're worshiping this person that's going to send them to hell. And we know the answer. Jesus is the only way. There are people in this county and in this city who are trusting their baptism, or they're trusting their grandparents. It's going to send them to hell. Jesus is the only way. And so because we have the answer, we go. We can't not go. Fourthly, God is committed to the nations. Before I get to number 4, I was going to share this illustration. Brother Richard was there when it happened. They were in a village sharing, going door to door doing water filters. And so I did not start the day with them. Maria and I had gone with a medical team. But part of the way through, we got away. We snuck away so that we could check on the rest of the team. And we walked up on from me to Mr. Richard, we walked up on a group of people that were gathered around a young man on a bicycle. And I could tell they were in the middle. I could hear, because they were translating. They were praying, and they were confronting him with the gospel. And I found out later what had happened. So one of our translators is named Will. We've met Will over the last few years. He's in his 20s. Incredible young man, loves the Lord, and works for YWAM, which is Youth with a Mission. It's an organization that's been around for a very long time, a couple of generations. They do mission work all over the world. He works with them. They have a compound there not far from where we were, and they bring teams in. But he also works with us when we need him to, and so he was with us. And Will is as nutty as a fruitcake. He's crazy. He's just got all kinds of energy, loves the Lord, and he's always wired. And apparently he was in the street doing a dance while they were walking around. He was just dancing. What's it called? Gritty? Anybody want to demonstrate? Anyway, so this young man asked Will if he'd teach him how to do that. And I was not there yet. And so Kevin, one of the leaders with our team, said, hey, he'll teach you how to do that if we can share a story with you. And he shared the gospel with the young man, and the young man came to know Christ. And I walked up while they were praying with him, and he changed. He was humbled and humiliated in his sin, and we were able to introduce him to the pastor. This is why we go. It's what saves a man or a woman. It's Christ and Christ alone, right? So number 4, God is committed to the nations. God is committed to the nations. So God is gathering a group of worshipers not just from Jones County. He's gathering a group of worshipers not just from Mississippi. He's gathering a group of worshipers that aren't just white. Unfortunately, it was taught in the Deep South, right here, not in this church, but in this county, it was taught that, hey, we're the only ones going to heaven. No, God is gathering a group of people from all over the world, every tongue, every tribe, every people, every land. And so God is committed to the nations. I read it Sunday morning, that verse from Revelation chapter 5, that tongue and tribe and people and nation. And so the gospel is going around the world, but there's so many places where the gospel has not been, and I'll get to that in a minute. But God is committed to the nations. Because God is committed to the nations, we need to go. Right? And let me share this with you, for those of you that are like, well, I don't think I'll ever leave the county. You know they're here. They're here. Go to any restaurant, any Mexican restaurant or any Oriental restaurant. They're all over the world. They're here, and they're here in Laurel. God's committed that people know from all over the world. God is committed to the nations. Number 5, the need is great. The need is great. As I said earlier, there are 7.5 billion people in the world. There are over 1 billion people who've never heard the name of Christ. It's hard for us to imagine, hard for us to believe. The need is great, right? And because of that, we need to go. Do you know that this is Jones County, of course, Jones County Baptist Association, 52 Southern Baptist churches in our association, 52. How many people does that encompass, Jones County? 70,000? 52. In the Dominican Republic, there's a town called Miches, M-I-C-E-S, Miches. 50,000 people, maybe closer to 70. Not one evangelical church in that town. Not one. We've got 52. Baptist ones. Not one. And we've been in that town, and we've prayer walked that town, and we're praying for God to raise up we're praying. But my point is, the need is great. There are people that don't know. There are people that aren't hearing the truth. There are people in that town that are hearing the lie of Roman Catholicism. They're hearing the lie of all kinds of horrible, non-denominational stuff that's not biblical. They're getting fed all kinds of junk. And the need is great that we go, right? The need is great. Number 6. Missionaries must be sent well. So missionaries must be sent well. So we've got the need, we've got the answer, we know that we need to go, we need to share. But what happens? We need to send them well. What do I mean by that? Well, turn if you would to 3 John. 3 John. Hey, it sounds like we're going to be here a while. No need to leave. 3 John chapter 1. It's nothing like a metal building to let you hear the rain. 3 John, well, it's only one chapter, so of course it's chapter 1. But I want you to see verses 5 and 6. Beloved, 3 John verse 5. Beloved, it is a faithful thing you do in all your efforts for these brothers, strangers as they are. Now watch verse 6. Who testified to your love before the church, you will do well to send them on their journey in a what? In a manner worthy of God. Church, let's go back to this illustration. Someone's got to hold this rope. Not everyone can go, but we will send them out in a manner that is worthy of God and worthy of the gospel. And so what we do is we support those who go. You've done this. You've prayed for us. You've financially supported us. We will always be interested in hearing. We'll always be interested in sending. This is our passion. This is our goal. We send them out well. We don't say, oh, those are those crazy people, and they go on these mission trips. No, they're our brothers and sisters, and we send them out well. I know this for a fact. When I first met Brother Gene, that Highland Church had a deal. If you wanted to go on a mission trip, there's $500 for anyone that wanted to go. Now, we've reallocated our budget money, and I'm not saying that's necessarily an indicator of where we need to be, but it was a great commitment that, hey, we're going to send you out well. And you guys did that for our team. You supported us in your prayers and in your giving and all those things and in your concern and all those things. We want to continue to do that, folks. We've got to have an environment where people say, I want to go and I want to be a part. I want to represent my church family, and I know that they're going to encourage me and pray for me. This is what we do. We don't put them on the fringe. They're a part of us, and they're a part of our team, and we send them out and they go. For instance, Charlie Brown is in Alaska right now. One of our own church family, he's in Alaska right now, and he's serving there, and we should lift him up and pray for him. We want to encourage anyone that goes, and we want to send them out well, as that text says, okay? Number 7, remember this, we live in war time. I guess it's actually one word. We live in wartime. Wartime. And so, folks, we need to have a warfare mindset as a church. What do you mean by that, Brother Eric? Well, this is serious. We're in the last days. There's much at stake. We need to do what we can to send people out. And once again, it's not just that they go to the DR, but when we go out these doors, this is war, folks. The world is not getting better. The Lord is near His return, and it is a battle out there, and we send them out. It's a wartime deal. I was reading about the Queen Mary there's an incredible picture. I don't know if you've seen it. I would encourage you to Google it. The Queen Mary was this incredible ocean liner that was, before there was Carnival, there was Queen Mary, right? And it's this massive cruise ship that people would take before World War II. But there's an incredible picture I would encourage you to Google. I don't even want to know the stories. It brought sailors home after the war was finished. And I mean, they are hanging out everywhere. I don't know how far they traveled. But during wartime, it was converted into a troop carrier. And so instead of having bunks that were 3 high, it had bunks that were 7 high. Instead of 18-piece place settings that were placed in front of them, there were rations with a fork and a knife. Hey, some of you, I hate to even say that, maybe none of you remember, no, none of you do, I don't guess, during World War II, the time of rationing. Not even Wayne remembers that. But I have heard those stories, right? You rationed. You cut corners. You saved rubber, you saved metal, you gave it all. Why? Because we're in a war. And so all of our resources are going to that. And so we're careful about what we do. We're careful about where we spend our money because we don't want to be wasteful. We want to make sure that we're focused on making the main thing the main thing. Turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 8. Great text of Scripture of Paul telling the Corinthian church of how the brothers had sacrificed to give in a time of great need. 2 Corinthians chapter 8 and verse 2. You start with verse 1. 2 Corinthians 8 verse 1. We want you to know, brothers, speaking to the church at Corinth, about the grace of God that has been given among the churches of Macedonia. For in a severe test of affliction, their abundance of joy and their extreme poverty have overflowed in a wealth of generosity on their part. They had been attacked. They had been persecuted. They were in deep trouble financially, but they found a way to give to bless their brothers and sisters. One of the pictures that came back the week before we got there, Maria was there, and she got a picture back from, there was a picture that they put on Facebook of the team that was there that first week, and they were posed in this bay, this little lagoon, and I had been there, and I had gone there because we were by ourselves waiting on a team to arrive. We had a few hours to kill. We went to go look at this beautiful place. It's where Beyonce and the Kardashians and all these people that certainly we don't need to emulate, but they've got all the money in the world, and they have homes here. And I and Maria said we were in Bayahibe today, and I'm like, yeah, what were you doing there? I mean, because that's a vacation spot. Y'all didn't work today. Y'all were No, they did work. I didn't know this. That Rain Down it helps our brother Wilfred, and he works with the Hispaniola Baptist Association. And they have planted a church because in all these resorts, there's the things you don't see. The very poor Haitian people that are eating dirt. And they've planted a church there in Bayahibe. And this is what I found out about it. That church in Bayahibe was planted by a church that is as big as 20 by 20 room, a metal building. They have nothing. They gave enough money to send a pastor to go start a church. And that church in Bayahibe is about to raise up another pastor who's going to go. They have nothing, but their passion is getting churches out who will share the gospel and who will minister to their folks, right? So it's wartime, folks, and we make the main thing the main thing. Number 8, prayer is for mission. Prayer is for mission, and this is the quote from John Piper. Prayer is a wartime walkie-talkie, not a domestic intercom. The prayer that God gives us the privilege to do, that we have the ability to communicate with Him, it is a wartime walkie-talkie. It is not a domestic intercom. In other words, we treat prayer with the Lord as a domestic intercom. Hey, Lord, I'm here. I would love for you to bless me. Lord, I'd love for you to bring me another pillow as I sit on the couch. Lord, I'd love for you to bring me some snacks. Lord, you make my life as comfortable as you can make it. That's what we pray. God, no, it's a wartime walkie-talkie. We're in a battle. My grandfather was in World War II. My grandfather Estes, and didn't talk about it. That generation didn't talk about it. And I hate that I'd never really quizzed him about it. I heard a couple of stories, but not really anything. But I found out after he passed away and I saw his military service record that he was in the Army. I knew that, but he was a part of something they called the Joint Assault Signal Company, JASCO, JASCO, all caps, JASCO, and it stood for Joint Assault Signal Company. You know what that was? Do you remember the little Army men that were in Toy Story? And you remember the little Army man that had the backpack that had the antenna and he had the phone to his... That was the JASCO guys. And so they provided radio support for troops that landed. And most of them were attached to Marine divisions. Even though he was Army, they got attached to Marine divisions, and they would provide radio support as the Marines stormed the beaches. And I have heard my grandfather talk about very, very briefly, but yeah, we're on beaches, and they're in the Philippines, and they're in the Southeast Asia and Solomon Islands, and they're there, and they're getting, this is war, right? and so when we pray, we understand, God, I'm in a battle. It's not a domestic intercom where I just ask God to bless me and ask God to make my life comfortable. No, God, use me in the middle of this war. Use me, however it may be. Number 9, in the middle of this understanding of the mission God's called us to, know this, Christian. Suffering is in the plan. I left out that little preposition word in. Suffering is in the plan. Christian, if we're going to go, we're going to suffer. That's not American Christianity. It's not historically been American Christianity, but listen to me, dear friends. It's coming. Did you see the exchange yesterday with the Senator Josh Hawley, with the law professor from Berkeley? Did you see that? Where they were talking about these transgender issues, and he just asked her, he says, ma'am, is it possible? He said, ma'am, are you saying that someone other than a woman can be pregnant? And she went nuts. Sir, it is statements like that are transphobic and that are creating violence against people of transgenderism. He said, are you serious? Me asking that if you believe that only a woman can give birth to a child, that's violence? She says, sir, you're transphobic and you're contributing to violence amongst transgender people. This is a law professor from Berkeley. And you and I can laugh and say, these people out in California, they're nuts. Listen, it's all over our education system. And so what's coming is this. Know this. When you and I stand on the truth of God's word, we are about to be challenged as being transphobic, as being hateful, as promoting violence, because we stand on the truth. Do you know this? Truth by definition is narrow. Right? By definition, truth is narrow. Let me give you some examples. 2 plus 2 is 4. Mathematical truth is narrow, right? 2 plus 2 is 4. Historical truth is narrow, right? John Wilkes Booth shot Abraham Lincoln in the head at Ford's Theater. It wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald. It wasn't in the stomach. It wasn't at the Smithsonian. It was John Wilkes Booth shot Abraham Lincoln in the head at Ford's Theater. Historical truth is narrow, right? Geographical truth is narrow. Texas and Oklahoma are divided by the Red River. Not the Mississippi, not the Columbia, but the Red River. Geographical truth is narrow. By definition, it's narrow. Truth is narrow, right? And so we have to be careful that we're not subjective, we're not relative. Truth is narrow and truth divides. But what's going to happen is you and I we're going to suffer. Jesus said it over and over and over. Matthew 10, Matthew 24, Matthew 10 again. I'm sending you out as sheep amongst wolves, all those sorts of things. This is the price that we have to pay. So turn to Revelation chapter 12 and verse 11. Revelation chapter 12 and verse 11. These are around the throne of God. Let's go back to verse 10. I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, now the salvation and power and kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come, for the accuser of our brothers has been thrown down, who accuses them day and night before our God. And they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. For they loved what? They didn't even love their lives to the point of death. They loved him. Lastly, good news, number 10. The mission cannot fail. The mission cannot fail. Listen, church, God's going to get his word out there all over this world. He's going to get it out there all over this world. And it will not fail. There will be some that will die for the cause of Christ. There will be some that miss out on the blessing of going for the cause of Christ. But this mission's not going to fail. You remember what Jesus said? All authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth, right? What does all mean in the Greek? Right? It just means all. He's got all of the authority. He doesn't have some of it. He didn't have a little bit of it. He's got all of the authority. And because he has all of the authority, what does he say do? Go and make disciples. I've got all the authority. And the gates of hell will not prevail against me and against you, the church. It's not going to fail. And so here's the question for us. We just have to be faithful to that. And so my passion to you, and I'm sure you're thinking, Lord, I wish y'all get through with this mission trip stuff and move on to another stuff. I got it. But look, we're committed. We've got to get the gospel to the ends of the earth. The Lord's going to accomplish his purposes, but why can't he not use us and we not receive that blessing? And we go. Yeah, Brother Eric, maybe next year I'll go. No, you're going out that door tonight. And you're going to your neighbor, you're going to work, you're going somewhere. Listen, you have the answer. And he has all the glory. And he deserves it in every aspect of our life. And so I gave you this is just one of dozens of things, probably hundreds of things you can find. I gave you the link down there to that, to where I kind of drew some of this from. Not all of it, but I hope that it will spur you on to see what God's doing all over this world and be a part of that. Okay? Questions? Comments? Criticisms? Alan? Rory Deal, pastor at First Baptist Church, Myrick. His dad passed away. Okay. Okay. All right, let's pray together. God, we thank you for your word. Thank you for for who you are. You're worthy of every song we could ever sing, every breath we could ever breathe. And your name is famous. And you're going to make your name famous all over this world. That every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that you are Lord. But God, I pray that in that process of when we reach your throne, that you would make us faithful to be about your business. Lord, some of us go. Some of us go far. We go far away. Some of us go, all of us go. We go to our sphere of influence. But Lord, as you send us out, those that go beyond just our normal realm of influence, perhaps you give us opportunities to go all over the world or all over this country. Lord, would you help us as a church family to be committed to hold the rope? To hold the rope while our brothers and sisters go. Thank you for our church that is committed to that, and I just pray you'd help us not to waver in that commitment, Lord. Make us uncomfortable unless we are supporting folks that are going out to uncomfortable places, difficult places to share the name of Christ. For you alone are the way of salvation. So Lord, help us to stand firm in a world that's more and more hostile to you here where we live. But as we know right now, there are brothers and sisters all over this world that are dying because they've stood for you. Lord, give us conviction that nothing is more important than your fame and your glory, and that men and women come to know you and worship you